Hello and welcome to JTV Podcasts. My name is Sam Kaufman, and in today's debuted episode, JTV founder Ollie Annisfeld and myself discuss the challenges of Jewish education in the age of diminishing attention spans. We speak about the long-term effects of this surface-level education, the rising impact of a culture based around the consumption of content, and the potential harm this could all lead to. I ask Ollie on how this all affects the creation of JTV videos, whilst he challenges me off the very notion that people really have such short attention spans to begin with, the necessity of why God has created such an egotistical, needy generation like today's, and in the process he shatters my worldview about Spider-Man. It's quite a classic thing, by the way, for two guys in their 20s to have a long chat and then think, oh, gosh, this should be a podcast.
Are we a stereotype?
Yeah, this is why I've told almost no one in the past couple of weeks about this, because I don't want to be that guy talking about my non-existent podcast.
Well, it is now existent.
Well, yeah, please God. The idea is, because I remember you had an amazing interview recently with Rabbi Manis Friedman. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen it, but I saw you afterwards and you were just beaming and telling me over. And I knew I had to check it out. Mm-hmm. The issue is it was 90 minutes long and only in the video form. So me, trying to be a bit techie, I downloaded it onto my phone. A bunch of uploading, downloading, so I could go for a run and therefore I could listen to it.
Okay.
And then I told, next time I saw you, I said, you've got to make a podcast just for the hassle of that. And this is an idea that we've been speaking about for a couple of weeks. And then we also thought, why not utilize the format, not just to put up pre-existing material that you guys have made, where, long hour, 90-minute interviews with big names, but also just a more informal, relaxed setting to talk about ideas and issues that I think are more personal to you and I. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know how much background I want to give about myself.
Give it a little bit.
I'll say I'm 21 years old. I'm from Golders Green originally. I'd say in life, in background, we have quite a similar story with similar style of school, but different school. Yeah. We ended up going to the same yeshiva, Torah school.
There was a non-Jewish school we both went to.
Both a non-Jewish school.
We're both quite British in our background and our
But it wasn't
culture.
so out of the bubble. As in, it was a school that Jews will go to.
Yes.
It's not unheard of. I wasn't the only kippah yarmulke wearing in the school.
Oh, I was.
Oh,
I was in my year. There was one other guy. I only put on my kippah when I was 17, going on 18. Oh. And there was only one other boy in my year that was wearing a kippah. So
wow.
There were.
What colour did you go for?
Sorry.
Did you go for a plain black one?
Plain black, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I play it pretty safe with my colours. But I didn't really give it much thought, to be honest. I just, put it on. And, I actually remember when I first put it on, there was a guy that said to me, this is going to last about a week. And I thought, challenge accepted.
Nice.
Were you where it was wearing a kippah?
Well, my school was, they said officially it was 25% Jewish.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
so
same with me.
But I think we had a joke that even though we were the most religious non-Jewish school in the country, and we had more guys after year 13 going to Israel for gap years or learning programs.
Why do you think that is? Because I've spoken quite a few times at the Jewish Society of your old school city of London, and I'm amazed at how committed a lot of the Jewish people are there. What do you think is the ingredients for that?
I think, if people know that they won't be the only kid going in, keeping kosher, wearing a kippah, leaving early on a Friday, that means that they don't feel like they'll be alone. They feel quite comfortable doing it. Because I remember when parents would come round to look at the school, they would sort of just see a kippah in the corridor, look at me and ask me a few questions about how things would work.
Right.
But also, the school's the Jewish Society, they say, is the biggest society in the school. They meet, they're quite big now. They had 2 lunch and learns with proper food and speakers like yourself coming in. They bought a Sefer Torah in the past couple of years, or someone donated one.
Wow. And
they were having a minyan, so they were praying it every morning, a group of them, every single day of the weekday. When I was there, we did it twice a week, and they bribed everyone with a breakfast of sort of croissants afterwards. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, I say it's quite sort of established and known about, that you can be a religious sort of modern Jew in London, go to that school, and it won't be a detriment. And academically, the school's I'd like to say pretty sharp.
Well, you seem to have done pretty well. You seem pretty sharp to me.
Depends who you ask.
Well, if you ask me, I say you are.
So I'd say that we are similar in background, thank God, which helps. Yeah. But I like to think that we have there's some issues that we have major disagreements on.
Oh yeah.
Which I think makes it a bit more interesting. Hence the whole we're a bunch of 20-something-year-old guys. Let's make a podcast.
Well, Sam, you've never actually mentioned these disagreements to me, so I'm excited to bear them publicly to the entire world for the first time.
Maybe because you never picked up on them.
Clearly.
You're always monologuing, and I'm still like,
well, Sam, please be less subtle in future.
All right. I'll tell you what, though, but today's sort of dichotomy, the difference between us, is less a ideological difference, but more just a point of view. I've helped you out with JTV.
I don't think we have an ideological difference.
Not majorly. I think it's sort of more maybe nuances.
I don't think we have any ideological differences.
You think politically?
Yeah, I don't think we do. I think we're probably... I reckon if we fleshed it out, which maybe we can do on a future podcast, you'll find that you and I agree on pretty much everything.
Yeah. I don't think it's a bad thing, though. I think it's far more interesting to talk about things you have a different...
I think truth is multifaceted, and so it's like we have the 70 faces of Torah, so... You know, you might have a different tone or way of expressing truth that I might, but it's all part of the two sides of the same coin, so to speak. So, but look, we've now clearly enticed people to come for podcast number 2, where we can talk about political matters, I guess.
Yeah, well, the gloves are off.
But that's not what you wanted to talk about today, was it?
No, the thing I was thinking about today is, and I think the difference is it makes you as more of a producer of content and me as more of a consumer. I've helped out a few times in the past couple of years, sort of with, I looked at scripts before and subtitles and that kind of stuff. But I've never been sort of behind the camera planning content. So maybe it's where we differ. I do consume a lot of online content, I'd say, not just from your channel. Some I'm proud of, and some I just sort of... It's just endless binging of YouTube clips of TV shows that I've already seen. So it doesn't feel like commitment to something else.
What kind of TV shows is it?
Like things like The Office. Actually, I've never really seen
The Office is brilliant.
The
Office was a childhood, just complete obsession of mine. Ricky Gervais is just one of the funniest.
You mean the UK one?
Yeah, the UK one.
I was thinking more of the American one.
No. Brits do comedy way better than Americans.
I agree, but there's more of the American one out there.
Okay, fine. Well.
They butchered it to 10 or 11 seasons.
Yeah, of course.
But, so that's my qualification. I have a large background in consuming online content. But I think I do a lot of it, but I think there's a detriment to it I'm really starting to notice, both in myself, but also just across friends and also across different generations. Which is just that our parents didn't grow up with this. They grew up with before the days of record TV, where if you didn't watch it live, you missed it. And so I think people's and their attention span was far greater. Nowadays, we're so sort of used to quick content, instant gratification. So a 2-minute video here, if you get bored of it, leaving it. And when it's so easy for us, it's no longer you have to go get up to the TV and physically change the channel. It's now just you tap your phone and there you are. It's having a wider detrimental effect on just our way of learning and consuming anything. And I mean, it applies, of course, in sort of more funny, silly, jokey sort of bingey videos, but also educational content. So I was reading up this week about just in general stats on attention spans. I found this cute infographic that I can find it in one of my many, many tabs. But it was about how in 2000, here we are, the average attention span, I'm surprised it was this little anyway, in the year 2000 was 12 seconds. Now, I don't know how they recorded it, but then they tried again in 2015, and it instantly dropped to 8.25 seconds.
So if I start making your videos on those bases, I go, hello everybody, welcome to JTV. Today we're going to talk about, well, that's it everyone, we appreciate your time.
Well, you know the thing about people when they make their first sort of judgment on a person? So you have like a few seconds where it's just the way you look and the way you start speaking.
Yeah, but that's a first judgment.
Yeah.
Okay, but then there's the
second attention span means they can sort of give up paying attention.
Yeah. Okay, so go on.
So it's jumped from 12 to 8.25 seconds in 2015.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's even less now. You know the whole thing about a goldfish has a memory of 9 seconds?
Yeah.
So it says that in 2015 we had worse memories than a goldfish.
Wait, so it's getting worse and worse?
It's getting worse and worse and worse. We're becoming more forgetful as a result. Small things, people's names, birthdays, sort of you meet someone and they'll say their name is John at the start, and then 5 minutes later you're blanked.
Yeah.
And this is another, they're saying, a side effect of just the decline in attention spans. People forget basic things, entering rooms, and not having no idea why they entered. At the same time, of course, the way we consume and sort of how much time we spend on our devices and this sort of social media and emails and WhatsApping, and how often we check, even if we don't know if it's coming in, we just go on to our phone and check and scroll down the list of pinging notifications, is sort of is increasing. And also tech companies are latching onto this. They're designing their content to be as accessible as possible. They're designing it to therefore, there's a lot of, even the colour green is meant to sort of, entice you like a green tick, you scored a point. So a lot of things like, complete form will be a green button. Read more will be a green button. They want to sort of entice you to keep going on the app.
Right.
Even on YouTube, at the end, they say you want to watch more videos, or they're constantly telling you which video to watch. YouTube don't care so much how much of a video you watch, provided that you spend that time on their site. In fact, the more videos, the better for them. Because every time you open a new video, it could be a new advert, more revenue for them.
Yeah.
So it's in their best interest just to get people to watch content.
Yeah.
They don't really care about the quality of the content. And we're becoming a lot more reliant on these sort of methods. So, and there are a lot more stats on this, and there's a whole ton of this. They said the average length of a video watched on the internet, according to study, was 2.7 minutes. How long would you say is the average length of a JTV video?
Well, we're actually quite proud about our average time. So it's actually the average time. I have to keep checking it because it changes a little bit each month, but it's around 4 minutes actually, which is actually double the average length. So I'm quite happy with that, but I still think it's not how it should be.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is I don't think it necessarily. I would challenge this presumption that we have such short attention spans.
Okay. In what area would you challenge? In terms of just, do you think for yourself, you've not noticed, or you just don't think these data it's quite skewed, it's giving off one very one-sided point of view?
Well, it's only one part of the story. So the first thing I would say is that, when people complain about, this generation, they're just so pathetic and they just have such short attention spans and they're just so, just completely just ignorant and they can't sit down for 5 minutes and hold a conversation. I think the first thing to recognize is that if this information overload and technology overload happened to any generation, they would react this way.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure.
So it's nothing inherent in our generation that's making us like this. We are victims of this, in a sense. And any other generation that had this, information overload, entertainment overload, serotonin overload, they would become, it has addictive qualities to it. As you said, they're designing it in a way that it has addictive qualities. But the point is that we, human beings, used to seemingly have far longer attention spans. And is it something in the human condition that's changed, or is it something that's happened to our environment that's changed our attention span? And I would contest, and I would hold that it's something that's happened to our environment, and we don't inherently have short attention spans. And I can give evidence for that.
Okay.
First of all, look at the rise of podcasting. Look at the rise of no one expected that, the rise of long-form content. There are some people online and some sort of philosophers, and like whether people are watching like Christopher Hitchens or Jordan Peterson or whoever, Russell Brand, Dennis Prager, all these people on either
JTV.
side of. Well, I mean, we're trying, but the point is, people are prepared. Some people, at least, if they're interested in a topic, they are prepared to sit down and listen to someone just talking or having a conversation for a long period of time. So why is that? So what do you think's happened? What do you think they're achieving? Because sometimes these podcasts don't have amazing graphics and amazing this, that, the other, which, by the way, there's a great place for that. And I think the reason why I use sometimes in some of the videos fast-paced graphics and animation stuff is because you can create an amazing experience. But it's like having constant highs the whole time. The brain goes into overload. We are designed to experience pleasure in moderation and at moments of, life is about going on a bit of a, you can't always have those highs. Otherwise, they're not highs. They're just, they are your constant.
Yeah.
The whole, so there's a place for having moving like things that can appeal to the heart and get you there. But people are also prepared to listen to sobering, calm content. And the distinction is if it's meaningful to them. If they think this has relevance to my life, you will pay attention. If I have something, everyone has desires in life. Everyone else thinks something they're trying to sort out in life. If I said, I have a book for you, which I assure you will fix your problems, people would read a book. I guarantee you, they would listen to a lecture for 3 hours, 5 hours. They wouldn't. They would gladly take on as much information as possible, and they would sit their bum down for as long as was needed. And it wouldn't matter how the content was consumed. So, what's the point? The point is that it's not that we have short attention spans. It's that we live in a generation that, as with every generation, but this generation particularly, is promised the world because there's so much accessibility and physical abundance and globalization. But at the same time, life doesn't always work the way you want it to. So we have these high expectations. We're told you can achieve whatever you want. And then we're constantly seeing on social media this stream of everyone seemingly leading these perfect lives, and it elicits all kinds of feelings of jealousy and shame and, oh, I'm not worthy, and feeling like my dreams can't be achieved and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but it's addictive at the same time because it elicits real feelings within you, and then you get this serotonin overload, and then you get entertaining content, and you can escape from that it all. And people use technology as a way to escape from their problems, and it's just a numbing activity. And so, of course, we have a short attention spans because we just constantly want to jump from something to something because we just want to escape. We're not interested in. So of course we have short. That's why we have short attention spans, because we just want the next hit, while we continue to escape our problems. But if someone comes along and says, "I can help you fix your problems," then people listen and people pay attention, and that's why I think. Some people and religious communities will be like, avoid technology at all costs. And I've never had that view with JTV. I've always thought, as with anything in this world, everything is neutral. It can be used to do good, to do bad, to love or to hate, to bring order or to bring chaos.
Yeah.
And technology, as Rabbi Sachs said, when we launched JTV and he gave it his blessing, he said, Zecher Sadik Levracha, Rabbi Sachs, he said, technology is God's gift to us to help share wisdom, to help, connect people with other people around the world. And it can be used to bring order and beauty and life and happiness and information. But it can also be used as forms of escapism and, all kinds of negative things that exist online. And so the answer really to this all is not to think, there's a reason why God gave us technology. It has amazing potential for good. And we're not going back to just, Hashem I do not believe, wants us to go back to not having technology. He gave it to us. But the point is we have to be master over it, not let it be master over us. And so these people who are listening to these long-form podcasts, and they can, sit there for hours just listening to something or watching something where it's not particularly highly produced, they do that because it's giving them order in their lives. And you'll find that the more order you have in your life, the more you can be the master of technology and content. And if that means sometimes watching something for a little bit of, just downtime, fine. But to experience that in moderation because you've got order in your life and you're happy. And you can utilize it when you need to, and when it's too much and you need time off because you can't just sit in front of a computer all day. It's not good for the human condition either. We need connection, all that kind of stuff. And so if you have order in your life, then you will use technology in the best way possible. And so this whole thing of attention spans, I don't believe there's anything inherent in our generation. I think it's just we need more order.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's not. I don't think it's unique to the fact that we are alive at this point, but it's just the influence around us. We're not to blame for the world that we grew up in, the world that we are in.
No.
Talk about their own personal bechira, personal free choice, and how we take control over the possibilities that we have.
Yeah.
And also, I agree with you completely that there is a place for all these forms of content. There's a place for 4-minute flashy videos about some idea, and they can be incredible.
Yeah.
And there's a time and a place for long, well-thought ideas.
Exactly. It's like, we have, in Jewish practice, there's time for dancing and celebration and things that really evoke the heart, which you can do that with really flashy content and moving content, cinematic content. But there's also a time for just sobering, just thinking, purely using your brain, intellectual stuff that might not be the most flashy, but you need that just to consume. You can't always consume intellectual information. Well, you can't consume just pure intellectual content when it's very emotive and very, you need to be in a classroom, So there's a time for a classroom, and there's a time for a wedding hall or a celebratory simcha, whatever it is.
This is like the line in Kehelet, Ecclesiastes. Is that how you say it?
Oh,
I've never known.
Tongue around that word.
The one done by Solomon, where he said that there's a time for dancing, time for joy, time for sadness. And also that you need both, otherwise it has no value. If you're only watching stand-up comedy specials, you stop laughing because that becomes the norm.
Yeah, and everyone who's just constantly getting this overload of whether it's just stuff on Instagram and they're just constantly scrolling, they're miserable. It's miserable. And also scrolling on Twitter and Facebook, where everyone's constantly moaning and screaming at each other and da 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 da. And just bringing more and more chaos, rather than thinking, okay, let's be proactive in trying to fix things, rather than just being another anonymous troll online that just criticizes everyone, hates the world. And it's becoming completely maddening, but it's addictive because people. It's like a vicious cycle, exactly. Because basically, the more it becomes painful, the more you want to escape. And how do you escape? By going on technology. Exactly. So, for me, my view is let's use everything tool in life and everything, including technology, to bring order and wisdom to people and godliness. Yeah.
But it's also you have to do it with a recognition of how it can be used and the pros and the cons of each medium. But also you have to do it with caution. I feel that you mentioned, say, the long Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, these long videos. Often the way people find out about these figures and these speakers is they'll see sort of short clips online of these taken from these big.
Yeah.
I've never sat down and listened to an entire Joe Rogan podcast, but I've seen many small clips of different figures. I've never actually listened to a whole Ben Shapiro university lecture, but I see those videos online of Ben Shapiro pons left
destroys.
And so you see those, but you don't. Yeah, what I fear about that is that you can.
It's not helpful either, because
you lose the context.
If you destroy someone,
of that as well.
If I'm destroying someone, that means that this person is worthy of being destroyed. And if I'm not mistaken, God told the angels to stop singing when the Egyptians, who were beating up his people, were drowning in the sea.
Yeah, that's why we spill the wine. One of the reasons we spill on the wine is that Seder night. It's sort of to remember the spilt blood of the Egyptians.
Exactly. And so, this language of destroying is basically what Rabbi Sachs spoke about, dualism, where religion doesn't just exist in spirituality, it can exist in your politics can become your religion, anything can become your religion. And you divide the world into those who are good and those who are bad, and those who are worthy of being saved, those who are worthy of being destroyed. And if I'm going to destroy you, it means you are worthy of being destroyed, and you have no value. You have no good value. And that's not good. That's not good. And so you tell me, you said at the beginning of this podcast, we're going to disagree on politics. I think you'll find that we'll probably have a lot more in common than you think. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think the whole tone of politics, both left and right, has become far too fanatical and too tribal.
It's more about not the why behind these discussions and what's actually they're talking about.
Yeah,
the style, the way that and the how.
It's become religion. It's become religion and fanatical, and everyone's digging in their heels, and it's basically us versus them, and it's dualistic.
But you know why also the Ben Shapiro destroys those videos, get millions of hits on the top. Why the angry tweets are always at the top of your newsfeed.
Because they're the most sensational.
Yeah.
And they're the most exciting, and the people, when people feel someone makes a really good point that they agree with, and they're allowed to make their point, and they may well be right in the points they're making. But whenever it's just trying to attack another human being, knowledge and what's true and not true is separate from the human being that you're disagreeing with, and that's the problem. That's the problem. It's the tone, and it's we should be able to disagree with respect for one another, that's just what's being lost, and it's just all part of this hysteria that's overtaken this generation, and that feeds into the whole attention span thing. It feeds into everything.
I'm sure. I know for sure a lot of it does. Yeah, but I was thinking with the short clips, whilst they incite and they're sensationalist and they get people to click, I think the theory is if you watch a 5-minute, 10-minute clip or something, or even these lectures, I mean, the way it works for me in university is that the lecture is meant to be a 2-hour, 1-hour overview of the topic, but we're meant to read around it. We're meant to do our own work around it. It's meant to sort of just be like a headline to the article. And if we are only consuming sort of the overview, the 5-minute best clip, or the highlights of the sports match, we're only used to that, then we forget and we don't understand the full context. And naturally, I mean, it takes more time and more effort to sit down and watch the whole lecture and to read all the books. But the amount of knowledge that you'll get from that piece will be significantly less.
Okay, and your point is?
Well, another sort of like fear of this short attention span and the way we consume content is, and you mentioned also it's about when you have a desire for the content, then you can sit down and bring more in, is that we seem we learn less from it. If you want to learn about a topic, and you go onto YouTube and you watch a 10-minute overview of that certain topic, you might, but now become familiar with the buzzwords. You can listen to a conversation about it and be more comfortable understanding it. But one's own knowledge lacks all the nuances and details that really it takes to, master a topic, master some piece of information. And if we're becoming more numb to sort of just the way we take in information, then it feels quite clear to me that also we're going to become more numb in our general understanding of things and the way we know stuff. It becomes more fuzzy.
Exactly.
And we'll learn less.
Which is why I keep challenging this notion that we have short attention spans. It's not true. If I'm here and I present to you something that you think can really enhance your life, or if you are convinced this can enhance your life, you will listen for hours and hours and hours, and you will make time, and it will bring order to your life. So all I think we need in this generation is to bring order and to bring truth and godliness. And it all, in my view, a lot of it comes back to that interview that you mentioned at the start that I did with Rabbi Manis. I think a human being needs to be needed. And when you feel needed, you feel you have a job to do, it brings order to your life, and you start to become master over yourself and over the things in your life that are going on, and you start to feel you have dignity and purpose, and then you overflow that to other people, and you become more loving to other people, and you can only overflow when your cup is full. And then that brings order to the world around you and to other people. And so I think we're not going to solve anything. Technology itself can't solve the problem, and turning off technology can't solve the problem, because we can't. The genie's out of the bottle now. And I know some religious communities, perhaps wisely, are just trying to limit it. But the problem is people's autonomy feels squashed. And then you end up having people that just are shamed or feel terrible and guilty for using their phone. And by the way, it turns out, I was just talking to someone yesterday who was sort of wondering, why is it that alcoholism isn't such is a very I think it's disproportionately lower issue in the Jewish world, certainly the religious Jewish world, than it is in other communities. And he thinks one of the reasons because it's so readily available, in Friday nights and Kiddush and Shabbat lunch. And when people feel that something isn't available and they can't use it, it creates a curiosity and a mystery around it, and so I think that it's a double-edged sword, just totally banning technology in a world which is so technologically connected. And it's like there's no going back, especially in Corona. It's undeniable to think that God doesn't want us to utilize technology when it's the only form of connection, and even the religious Jewish community are getting on board with it now.
Yeah.
And so it must be that it's not that we should destroy technology. No, we should just become master over it rather than letting it be master over us. But the answer to that lies outside of technology. The answer to that is purpose, meaning, fulfilling your potential, finding your purpose, and having a relationship to God, to something outside this universe, something greater than the universe, greater than you, greater than all of us.
Also, it should be said that even the more Haredi, more ultra-Orthodox communities who've often held back from technology, and I live in an area which has a lot of these sort of people around me.
Yeah.
My family aren't as such, but even when they bring it in, they do it within moderation, which I have a lot of respect for. They won't let internet devices into their home unless it's got a strong filter.
Yeah.
Not just restricting things they think is inappropriate, but just sort of time filters.
Yeah.
I saw, especially when Corona started, they were advertising, they called them Zoom tablets. And they're basically like very cheap Kindle Fire type tablets that were been programmed that they only had Zoom. So they could be internet connected and you could use them, but they were limited, so you could only use it for the purpose they had it for. They don't want people to sort of take them and then to start, endlessly consuming small videos and content and memes. And they wanted to limit it. Even like when parents, when they introduce technology to their children, I'm always amazed. You ever see this when you go to like a restaurant and you'll see a family of young kids and it's like their night off and they've gone out and all the kids are just sort of watching or they're consumed with iPads and little video games, and it terrifies me that they get so much access to it. Yeah.
As I say, it's a double-edged sword because if you limit it too much from kids, it's like not giving them sweets, candy.
I had that.
Yeah. So you weren't given it?
Yeah. Well, my dad is a children's dentist.
Okay.
So
did you become obsessed with it when you?
Well, it's a bit. When I was growing up as a young kid, we never had any sweets in the house. We had Rice Krispies, not Cocoa Pops.
Okay.
I had a friend once come round and we had cornflakes. And he never seen them without the sugar coating.
Well, your teeth were great, to be fair.
Oh, thank you, mate. Too kind. All credit to my dad. I'll put his business card out at the end. But I know. I mean, as a young kid, we never had it. I remember on Rosh Chodesh, on the first day of the month in primary school, everyone could bring in a sweet, a bit of candy in, and I used to bring in a satsuma. So there's a level of envy that grew out of that. And I think when I became like 14, 15 with my own debit cards and access to shops, at times I go a little bit overboard. I just buy and buy. Recently at Purim, someone got me a little mishloach manah, a little gift bag. And I had a whole packet of Haribos in it. And I just opened them and finished them within like 5 minutes because I don't think I ever owned the whole packet to myself.
Wow.
And I think a bit of that is, on the other side of my parents, which I'm very grateful for, is growing up, they never allowed us to have a games console at home. And all my friends did, and I was always like so envious of them, and I would try and do different chores to get a Nintendo DS or access to that one, or even just a phone with games on it. And when I go to friends' houses, I couldn't stop playing on their Xbox. But I grew up without a dependency on it. And I've never I can't sit and play video games for hours. I can do five, I can't.
Me too, I can't either. Although sometimes, but...
I owe it to that.
No, look, everyone has the things that just don't appeal to them anyway and things that do appeal to them. But if it might appeal to you, if there might be some curiosity there, then, being told you can't do it in some ways creates more of a desire to experience it because you want to know about it. So it turns out that I think in this generation, more than any other generation, we just don't like being told what to do. And I know I don't. But we feel we want autonomy. We want autonomy. We
also believe it's a right, which is...
Yes.
More, I don't say modern, but more modern idea. Yeah.
And the question is, why would history go that way? That we feel more and more interested in our decision making and no one enforcing it upon us, and us feeling as autonomous and self-conscious as possible. And the answer is because that's exactly what God wants. Why? Why would he want us to feel such a sense of self? Because then, when we choose him, and choose to love him, that's a real relationship because we've really chosen it. See, when Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, they were so aware of their, the fact that they're just a product of God's creation. They're just like, all right, God, what do you want? What do you want from us? And see, they figured out that eating from the tree, even though God said don't do it, that's exactly what God needed to happen, because he couldn't tell them to do. The whole point was they had to go against his. They figured out the whole point was they had to go against his will so that they would then become something outside. They were just like a complete product of God's creation. So there's no relationship. There's just God. They're a product of God's creation. So by eating from the tree and doing something against his will, suddenly they become a self. They ate from the tree of knowledge, of knowing good and evil, meaning they suddenly are able to pick between the two. They suddenly have choice, free will. And Hashem said, Shkoyach. Shkoyach. We believe history only progresses. It doesn't. It only goes in one direction. You really want to tell me that Adam and Eve, the greatest of the greats, the original human beings, they didn't have. They were just too stupid. They made a mistake.
Like little children.
No. They realized that if God can't tell you to do this because then there's no self. If he says, I do it, but I don't want you to do it, but I need you to do it.
It's the catch-22.
Yeah, it's the catch-22. So he can't tell you to do it, but they realize you got to do it. And then God said, and that's why, God said, why was day 6 the greatest day, and then day 7, like it was, it clearly, that's why the Yetzer Hara was so, God's like, this is very good, because that means you now have choice. And so ego, the whole process of history is us developing more and more of a sense of self, more and more of an ego, so that we feel as much a sense of self as possible. And then we just tell God, and then what will happen is we then choose a relationship with God, and then it's a real relationship. So what's happening now is we're just becoming the most needy generation, the most self-obsessed, the most wanting of autonomy, which is fantastic, because then when we choose a relationship with God, it will be the most real it's ever been in human history.
So you're saying it's, if utilised well, it's the ideal state? Because I often look at it as sort of a lot of restrictions that we've now imposed upon ourselves, or we now have with ourselves, that get in the way of a relationship with Hashem. All these sort of distractions and me, and we don't think about others and the world outside of our own peripheral vision.
Yeah.
I mean, that might just be taking, the other side of the coin. If you take the opportunity that we have and then go down the alley of, I guess, sort of single-mindedness and the bad side of ego.
Yeah.
But you're saying if it's harnessed, it can become it can really strengthen the relationship that an individual will have with Hashem.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it in such a way.
Yeah.
I know Rabbi Sachs often spoke about how Judaism is the only religion that looks forwards.
Absolutely. Our golden age is in the future.
Mm.
Every other empire and nation, their golden age is in the past or in the present, but ours is in the future.
Yeah. And also it always makes sense that the world that we are entering into has to be one step closer to Mashiach, to the final redemption.
It only goes in one direction, and that's the story of Purim, that no matter what happens, even if you do nothing, God wants you to do something because he wants you to be part of the story. Yeah.
Isn't that what Mordecai says to Esther? He says, regardless of what happens, God will save us.
Exactly.
But you could be the one who really is the catalyst to change.
Exactly. We don't choose the ending, but we can choose which character we play in the story. And evil will destroy itself. Haman will build the gallows for Mordecai, and he'll end up being hung on the gallows. Who killed Hitler? He killed himself. Evil will destroy itself in the end.
It's just a ticking time bomb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It has to happen because God has to have a relationship with us. He has to. So evil must be destroyed.
Yeah. It's funny when you're talking about Adam and Eve. I was thinking about this morning actually because I happened to be teaching some 7-8-year-olds, and I mentioned the story of Adam and Eve. And when I learned about it as a kid, I thought of it as a very simple black and white sort of cartoonish story of there happened to be a first man, but he's like me. And the first woman, he's like her. And they walked around, and they ate from a tree, and then God got mad, and he threw them out of the garden, simple as. And then as I got older, especially if I read the Ramchal by Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He's written about, a few times he's written about the deeper meaning behind the story of Adam and Eve. And how it's a very deep philosophical point, and there's tons on it. And we think about it as a very simple, childlike story. And we often forget that there's a reason why the Torah kicks off with this story.
Absolutely. Look,
it's Rashi's first question.
There's so many different levels. There's a level for the child to understand. There's a level for the adult to understand it. And there's 70 faces to Torah, and and different tones for Torah. And each generation requires a different tone. And it's not wrong what you learned, but it's also only one side of the story. There's much more depth to it, and there's much more to learn. And we've one of the things that actually bothered me about some of the Jewish learning I got at a young age, and not always, but was I felt it was very childish, very one-dimensional, very simplistic, and just a bit like. And I wasn't saying that I thought it was that. I thought, no, this must be much deeper. There's something much deeper here. And I don't like that this is being just treated as some kind of like, I remember when we were like learning about Noah's Ark. I'm like singing in Cheder, like pitter patter raindrops. And I was thinking I was already like 9 at that stage. And I was just like, this is just so childish. Like, what are we doing, Like, there's so much more depth. I'm sure there's much more depth to this story. I wasn't denying that. And obviously there is. But it's the dumbing down of the Torah. And the divine word cannot be, there's nothing less dumb.
Although, I mean, you might have just been a very smart 9-year-old. There's nothing wrong with age 9 having a very rudimentary understanding of these stories. What is sad is when you're 19, 29, 39, and that's still the same understanding of the stories. And like, even if you're not aware and you can't give, 5 different major theses of what actually happened on Noah's Ark, if you're aware that world exists, that there is that content,
everyone thinks that. It's just childish and hocus pocus and all this kind of stuff, and so I don't blame them for rejecting it. But we know that it's divine, it's infinite, it's got the whole world in it.
There's a famous story, I think it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, where someone said to him, "Rabbi, I don't believe in God," and the Rebbe went, "Yeah, me too." So I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah," and the rabbi went, "The God that you believe in, I don't believe in either." Yeah. It is very simplistic, sort of old man in the sky, angry.
Yeah, I never got that. I never thought about an old man in the sky, because it's obvious to me we're not talking about a man.
Sure.
That sounds like Christianity to me. We're not talking that. So I never got old man in the sky.
If you look at the paintings, the great Christian paintings, that is how it's.
I know, but we're Jewish, and I was like, God's not a man. But yeah, no. Look, people have misconceptions, and it's not a shame because we can set the world right.
Yeah, and of course.
But that's why it's also important not to, to blame people if they if they have a misconception, because they have a misconception which was given to them, or they weren't educated, or that and so everyone. Also, this is part of why you should feel hopeful for the future of humanity and relationships and other people. A lot of the way people behave is actually a result of things that happen to them.
Yeah.
Their nature.
Reactive.
Exactly. It's reactive. Our bechira, our free will, is actually relatively limited. And so it just takes, we've got to trust God. They'll, with our help, put the world right.
Rabbi Tatz writes about it, by Dr. Akiva Tatz, in his book, Thinking Teenagers' Guide to Life, which is an incredible book, by the way. That isn't just for teenagers. I read it when I was 18, and then I read it again a couple of years later. He speaks about the level of free will, one's bechira, and how every single point in one's life they have a challenge, a unique challenge bespoke to that person, and then you can master that challenge. So it can be a small thing. It can be sort of waking up on time and wanting to, have the excitement to pray in the morning. And then you can work on that skill, and then the moment you've overcome that, you've achieved that, it's still a challenge to you, but it's sort of like you've shifted the goalposts now.
Exactly.
You've got to work on the next challenge. Can I say all the words with the right intention? And then so our level of bechira, free will, still exists in all areas.
Yeah.
But it only really exists in the areas where we make an active current choice.
Yeah. And it's so wonderful, by the way. It's such a wonderful process because, like, that's growth, you know, like, you know, you overcome a hurdle and it's great and you enjoy it and you smell the roses and then it's like, okay, let's go to greater heights. And you're just fulfilling yourself more and more and more and more. And that's what happened with Abraham's 10 tests. It was just like, let's just take you, you know, we see tests as a negative. Oh, no. It's like being in the gym. It's building muscle. And you look at that muscle, like, whoa, all right, let's see if we can go for higher weights now, you know. I'm not speaking from actually a bit of experience now. Well, I mean, I just flexed for Sam. And so, yeah, it's tests are great, you know. It's for really for self-knowledge to realize your potential and your growth. Yeah.
But that's how you develop muscle. I understand. That's what the term being ripped means. Is that you'll push yourself to where your muscles are kind of going a bit more than they're able to do.
Yeah.
And so you're pushing it a bit, and then the muscle sort of gets a bit ripped, and then kind of it heals, and you go on one stage up.
Exactly.
And then you
it
go
breaks
an
down.
extra
It's like
level of weight.
It's like,
so I've been told. I've never actually tried it.
Well, it's like paradigms.
Gyms scare me.
It's like a paradigm. You're in a paradigm, and then to go out of it, you have to break down the paradigm, and then a new paradigm built. It's a bit like planting trees. What happens first when you plant the seed? It breaks down. It decomposes, and then that's the beginning of it. I've always found it funny that the person that trains me is his name.
Personal trainer at the gym.
So someone I do training with. He's a personal trainer. He's called Alon, which means a tree. And call him. He's affectionately called Aloni. Which means my tree, and it's literally like.
Are his arms like trunks of trees?
Well, no, but no. The point is, he's in great shape. But the point is that that's how building muscle works. It's the same as how trees grow. You've got to rip the muscle. You've got to destroy the paradigm, in order to build something even greater. Yeah. And it's the same with growth.
Same with learning as well. You have to go a tiny bit outside your comfort zone. You know, try and be in environments where the content is a bit above you, tiny bit, but an achievable amount above you. Yeah. And then you can sort of get into it. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, why not? But dovetailing back to sort of the points the female's opening with, the short videos, let's say you make, or the short videos to any topic, they can be sort of like gateways. If you try and say we're going to cover the entire story of Noah in 5 minutes, and you present it as the entire encyclopedia of it in 5 minutes, then you're going to fail. Yeah. If you speak about it as an introduction to...
It will also fail for two reasons. See, our tagline is Jewish Ideas Global Relevance. Okay. For me, just telling a story of Noah or telling a story of this, that, it's like, well, so what? What relevance does it have to my life? I mean, I remember when I first went to a Talmud class in yeshiva. I had no idea what yeshiva really was at that point, and Judaism I'd only really experienced as like being relevant ideas on the weekly Torah reading or Jewish history, and it was all very meaningful. And I get into a Talmud class, and they're talking about selling a piece of land in a plot of land in ancient Israel, and I put on my hand totally innocently. I said, "What relevance does it have to my life?" And I didn't get a good answer at the time. Now, of course, I have a great understanding and appreciation for the importance of the methodology behind Jewish law. But
it's a good question to have.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So
in some places, that question is sort of almost scorned and people are embarrassed to ask it. But
yeah, well, I wasn't. Yeah, and it's quite well. It's I don't know what it says, but I said it, and. So for me, the questions always be, what relevance does the story of Noah have to me? What's the message behind it? Not just what, why, and what's it telling me? That comes back to what we're saying about content that sell. If you know that content is relevant to your life and can enhance your life, can help fix your problems, you will pay attention. So that's always been the motivating drive for JTV and for the kind of content that's been interesting to me and that I've wanted to share with other people.
So you think if you can make the content seem everyone can be aware that the material you're covering is relevant to them and they can develop a desire for it, then they'll come back for the 90-minute videos, the long videos, they'll go to classes, they'll get more involved.
Yeah, perhaps.
It's a good gateway, but you don't feel like you're sort of limiting them only to the 5-minute clips. And limiting them to a service level knowledge.
As I say, we do a mix of content. You know,
Sure.
it's like the emotional and the intellectual. So
And
the
Trump
longer
parodies.
form and the short form. Exactly, and the Donald Trump impersonators, which I love. By the way, my favorite thing about Trump is the way he always finishes the sentence by saying, and you know that, and everybody knows that, and you know the election was a fraud, you know that, and it's like the self-confidence of, and everybody knows, you know that, and it's like I really I admire it, because he's like he's saying everyone knows that. I think, well, if everyone knows the election was a fraud, then you would have, then you would win, and then you would be the president right now. But no, honestly, I've learned from everyone, and I learned from his self-confidence. He's just insisting that everyone knows what he knows and what he thinks. And of course, that's not true. Everyone has a different brain, a different perspective. But I appreciate his self-confidence and wanting to push for what he believes is important, you know. And it's just quite funny though, like saying, you know, like dark chocolate's the best kind of chocolate out there, and everybody knows it. You know that. Come on.
It's a very distinct style of speaking. So nothing where we disagree on.
Can you imagine?
You think your Donald Trump impression is far better than I think.
Can you imagine like a rabbi talking?
Yeah.
Like you know, like look, you know, and Abraham was very hospitable, and you know that. I mean, you know that. Everybody knows that. That's what. Like, just give. It's just such a funny way.
When you stand on the pulpit,
yeah,
you can get up there. That'll be your time to shine, and you can assert knowledge onto the community. I look forward to it.
One day.
Alas, we digress. No, I mean, look, I think that's very true though, because I was wondering about the responsibility. So I said, as you as a content creator, there's a responsibility if you're putting things out in the ether about big topics, very fundamental topics. And I've spoken to people where a lot of their entry to different big Jewish topics came through JTV. I came across you, I guess, later when I was sort of ready, you know, the one who's part of the crowd, part of the choir. Mm-hmm. But they said it's been massive for them. So you have a responsibility in that sense. But if you always go into your content with the idea of making it relevant to them and not trying to say it's sort of, you know, all-encompassing, then, yeah, hats off to you. I think the theory is when people, they make small content and their goal is not just to, you know, become a catalyst of more learning, but rather just to get more views, to get the people to watch their next video and the next video, and then it becomes very sort of like a circular. You know, again, what I said about the social media companies and the companies like YouTube and the way they model their products is only about them and not about really about the needs of the viewer. But if you're taking it with the needs of the viewer in mind, then I can only assume that it will be successful.
Yeah,
I feel it is, by the way.
I've always felt there's got to be a synthesis between what I want to share and the best way that people want to consume, you know, content and what people want. And JTV and I think any successful media company is going to be about constant fine tuning of how do I communicate the things that I care about in a way that people will be receptive to. But I think the most important principle is talking about what you care about and what you know. And if you have passion for something, people will be receptive to it. You know, is that how you choose the content and the videos you make on JTV? Largely.
Purely
sometimes we'll be responding to events or responding to things that are happening.
Sure.
But, you know, yes, I think absolutely share what you're passionate about, and that will shine through. And, you know, I remember listening to all of Ricky Gervais' interviews about how he, you know, came up with The Office, and it was based on life experiences, and same with Extras and these other things. That was another TV show that he did. And he just said, write about what you know. What you know is the best form of content. And what he really means, what you care about, or what you're passionate about, or what you find funny, or what you find wise, what you find informative, what you find, etc., etc.
Because it works.
Meaningful. Yeah. When you're overflowing from what you have to other people, people are receptive.
I think, like, even in if someone has a desire to learn about, you say read this book and it'll fix all your problems in life, it helps if the book's well written. It helps if the book's, got jokes in there and breaks in there and it becomes more exciting.
It helps.
It's not essential, but it really, we're human beings and we get tired and distracted, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Even if it's right, and even if you are not certain, but if you think this can really offer wisdom for my life, people, they have other things going on in their life and they need things in moderation. But I'm just saying, the more people believe, the more the wisdom is there, the more attention you're going to get overall. Because
you can't fake authenticity. That's
You can't fake wisdom, because wisdom is self-evident, and and when people hear it and it resonates, and it enhances their life. It proves itself.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like when people they get the impression that you are passionate when you're speaking about the things you're speaking about in the video. Especially when I think the more things that are more off the cuff, it's a live event, or the videos that you sort of film in the portrait mode on your phone.
Yeah.
Where like it really comes across that it's something that you've thought about and that you care about, and that it means something to you. And you become not just sort of a transmitter of information, a middleman, but you become an actual, I guess it's more the role of an educator, or any form of educator or presenter, just to make it sort of become more human. And naturally we'll care more, because if you care, it must be important.
Well,
not because
I appreciate that.
If the person you're listening to cares, also if it's you.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, then it gives it sort of an undercurrent of status, of value that is detected.
Yeah. I think that's it, yeah. Being authentic and sharing what has helped you in your life is powerful.
Yeah. And I think most of the things I think about circle back to my favourite Spider-Man quote, which is, with great power comes great responsibility. Because I've always thought this idea, I know it's a fun Spider-Man thing, and they say it in a few of the films, and I've always enjoyed Spider-Man. I've got my own, I'm 21, and I've got a Spider-Man morph suit that I've worn the past 4 or 5 perms. And my brother's now got a matching one as well, so we've now become Spider-Men. But like, the reason I like the character so much is because of that one idea. That he sees himself as not just like, he didn't set out to become the superhero. He was given this power, and he assessed after a few life events that he had a responsibility to use that power. And if we've got the power, be it a passion for something, or an interest in something, or a unique take on something, or a platform to share it in, and we use that, and we go into it with recognizing our power, being responsible over that power, and using that to really best fashion the tool that we have, then it really comes across, and it really becomes quite super. As opposed to if you're there because you seek the power, you're not responsible about it, and you just sort of do it for more service level reasons, and it only will ever become service level.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Spider-Man. And yet, I've been looking for a while, a lot of Googling, if I'm honest with you, about like some great line of some ancient rabbi, or written in the Talmud, of a great sort of a proverb that seems to encapsulate the general idea of great power, great responsibility. If someone could let me know, I'd be very grateful.
Great power comes great responsibility. Let's think.
Because I once spoke to teenagers about this.
Well, I'll tell you that I think it actually, in Judaism, works the other way around. The more you take responsibility for God, the more he gives you power. AKA our great forefather, Abraham. What do we know about Abraham before God said to him, Lech lecha, Abraham, go for yourself, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I'll bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And suddenly he's got all this power, all this blessing and reward. Where did that come from? Do we know anything about him beforehand? Did he just get this out of the blue? He literally just shows up, right? So
in the basic reading of the Torah, he just sort of appears.
Yeah, so it turns out that actually we do know a bit about him beforehand. Oh, in the Midrash and in the commentary? No. In the Torah text itself.
We do?
Do we?
Pray tell.
We do. But people have missed this. Some people have missed this. So, in the end of Parshat Noah, the second Torah reading, we are introduced to Abram. That was what his name was before he became Abraham. And basically what happens is Abraham. Well, actually, let's wind back even further a second. Just before we're introduced to Abraham, we have the story of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And what happened was you had a people who they said, let's build this big tower. Why? Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be destroyed and scattered. And basically, they were saying, we want to make a monument to ourselves, to us. And God said, oy vey, this is not good at all. I'm going to have to scatter them. What's all that about? What was going on? Basically, they were trying to make life all about propagating themselves and their own persona, ego, and it was a very, very kind of self-oriented society that basically just said it's got to be about us, and they were kind of, I suppose, in some ways, pushing God out of the picture, and so their society was propagating their own name, building a monument to us. Let us make a name for ourselves. And then we're introduced to Abraham, and what we're told about him is that his brother dies, and so he ends up marrying one of the daughters of his brother, and his other brother marries the other daughter of his brother. And she's known as Iska, but we're told, I think, by Rashi, I think it's Iska, that Iska was Sarai, who was Abraham's wife.
Yeah.
And so Abraham's other brother was able to have a child with one of the... And the reason was it was sort of like a type of yibum. Yibum was where you marry if a husband is able to... Sorry, if the brother of a deceased brother...
Yeah, it's just a case where if a man, sadly, or a family, you've got a husband and wife,
yeah,
and he passes away before having children,
yeah,
then it's a mission, it's an oral tradition, it's a law that the brother of the deceased guy has to now offer his hand in marriage to this widowed woman.
Yes.
So that she has sort of a way to sort of be still supported and also to continue the family name. It's not really the marrying the sibling part doesn't happen at all nowadays.
Yeah, it doesn't happen at all anymore.
In the very rare cases, what does happen is this sort of very interesting tradition of the way they get out of it. There's a whole they have to spit on a shoe.
Yeah, exactly. Now, why do you think they have to spit on a shoe?
Why to spit on a shoe? Ooh.
Because
I don't know, I've learned about it.
Saying, I think one of the reasons saying, you are not going to fill his shoes and take his place and continue to exactly what you said, continue his name.
Yeah.
Right? Continue the deceased brother's name. It's a great chesed. It's a great kindness to do this. You're going to propagate the name of someone who is deceased, who can no longer do it. And Abraham is saying, I'm going to propagate the name and of someone who's no longer was unable to continue to propagate his name. And it's a great kindness to do that. And so he married Iska, Sarah, and they were unable to have children. Yeah. So now it's like, well, what does he do? So Abraham was a man focused on propagating the name of others, and also of propagating the name of God.
Okay.
He was focused on the propagation of other people's welfare, other people's names. And interestingly enough, it says, Vayesh, I think the language is Vayeshvu Sham. They settled there when it talks about the people just about to build the Tower of Babel. It says they settled there and then they're about to build. And they use the exact same language. I think it's at the end of Parshat Noah, where it says Abraham and Sarah, they settled in a place, I think it was called Haran.
I know what you mean.
And it's almost like maybe telling us, because I think this is the only two times in the Torah where this language, Vayeshvu Sham, is used. They settled. There's only these two occasions. And maybe it's saying they were thinking for a second, they were kind of at breaking point. I don't know, but maybe they're thinking, because there's like a connection between here. Maybe there's maybe it's a contrast between the two types of thing, but maybe they were thinking, we can't propagate the name of, what do we do now? Do we break up? Do we, where do we go from here? And it's at that point where God then comes into the picture and he says, Avraham and Sarah, Shekoyach, Lech Lecha. Now you go. You have shown me that you are someone prepared to propagate my name in this world and propagate the name of other people in this world. And you are the exact kind of person that I'm going to need to propagate my name throughout the entire world and to be the father of a people who propagate my name throughout the entire world. You are going to be the head of the forefather of my chosen people. And so when you say, with great power comes great responsibility, Avraham took responsibility, and for that reason he was given all this power. God will reward people who take responsibility with power because they are going to use the power for good.
Thank you for joining us today and listening to JTV Podcasts. You can find more podcasts from JTV, including interviews with Rabbi Manis Friedman, Dennis Prager, Rabbi Dr. Akiva Tatz, and many more. Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Just search for JTV Podcasts with Ollie Anisfeld. Don't forget to subscribe on the JTV YouTube channel for hundreds of videos on Jewish philosophy, Israel, Jewish wisdom, and much, much more. Please consider supporting us so we can continue to grow. Just visit paypal.me/JTV channel. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.